As I sat in the car, waiting for an event that was supposed to begin ages ago, I couldn't help but feel anxious. I had stumbled upon the opportunity through Craigslist, desperate for some quick cash. I had clicked on a paid clinical trial that offered $1,000, but the details were vague. The start time was 11 p.m., and there were strict rules about smokers, drug users, and people with serious illnesses. Despite the red flags, I couldn't resist the allure of easy money. As time ticked by, my girlfriend and I grew more restless. The garage grew quieter as people gave up and left. But I couldn't leave. I needed the money too badly. Finally, after 2 long hours, the organizers arrived. "Are we going to sit here all night?" My girlfriend spoke up, breaking the silence that had settled over us as we waited. I tore my gaze away from her and gazed around the desolate parking lot, feeling increasingly anxious. "I hope not," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. Taylor was stunningly beautiful, and sometimes I couldn't believe that she was with me. "Let's give it a little while longer. Maybe they're just trying to weed out some people." But as the hours stretched on and the darkness deepened, Taylor grew restless. "We've been here for 2 long hours, Romy. I have a life too, you know." I knew she was right, but I couldn't leave. I needed the money too badly, and I was starting to feel like I had made a terrible mistake. Finally, just as I was about to give up hope, the organizers showed up. As I waited in the parking lot, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had found this opportunity through Craigslist, desperate for cash to cover my overdue rent and mounting credit card debt. The ad had promised a paid clinical trial with no details of the study provided. I had arrived at 11 p.m., as instructed, and as the night dragged on, I watched as others slowly lost hope and left. But I stayed, unwilling to give up on the prospect of earning $1,000. My girlfriend, Taylor, was there with me, but even her presence wasn't enough to make me feel at ease. "Are we going to sit here all night?" she asked, her voice sharp with frustration. "I hope not," I said, trying to keep her calm. I couldn't help but admire her beauty, wondering why she had chosen to be with me when she could have anyone she wanted. "Let's give it a little while longer. Maybe they're just trying to weed out some people." But Taylor was growing restless, checking her phone and casting worried glances in my direction. "We've been here for 2 long hours, Romy. I have a life too, you know," she said, her voice growing more irritated by the minute. I knew she was right, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. I was too desperate for the money, too trapped in my mounting debts. And so I waited, watching as the night grew darker, hoping that my patience would pay off. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the organizers arrived. "Just so nobody sues us," he said with a little chuckle that made my skin crawl. He reminded me of a used car salesman, untrustworthy and overly enthusiastic. We signed the forms and then took a seat on one of the folding chairs that were all assembled into a circle, making us face each other awkwardly. The decaying woman from earlier took a seat next to the smiling man. He looked very proud of himself and I wanted to know why. To my horror, he put his hand on her knee and gave it a little squeeze. We all just sat there, in complete silence. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Claude, and this is Wendy," the man said finally, taking his hand off of Wendy's knee and reaching for the pile of papers that sat on the floor. "Out of over 100 people that drove down here tonight, you are the only ones that waited over an hour. For a Craigslist gig that promised you $1,000. He looked amused and I hated him. "Some of us would have waited longer for that kind of money," one of the strangers said. He wore a pair of bright red Nikes and was tapping them anxiously on the floor. I remembered him from the parking garage because he had been chain smoking and writing frantically in a journal. "What exactly have we gotten ourselves into?" chimed in another one. "I don't like to mislead people, so I'll get straight to the point. If you aren't interested in the activity you may leave, but once the study has begun the doors will lock." His dark eyes glistened as he looked around the room. "We will be drawing approximately 3 vials of each individual's blood." The man's chuckle made my skin crawl as he explained that the waivers were just to cover themselves from potential lawsuits. After we signed the forms, we sat down in a circle of folding chairs, feeling awkward and uncomfortable. The decaying woman from earlier sat beside the overly enthusiastic man and I cringed as he put his hand on her knee. Finally, the man introduced himself as Claude and the woman as Wendy. He explained that out of over 100 people who responded, we were the only ones who waited for over an hour. For a Craigslist gig that promised you $1,000, he added with amusement, making me hate him even more. Some of us would have waited longer for that kind of money, one of the strangers remarked, tapping his bright red Nikes anxiously on the floor. I remembered him from the parking garage because he had been chain-smoking and writing in a journal. Another person chimed in, "What exactly have we gotten ourselves into?" Claude's dark eyes gleamed as he delivered his answer. "I don't like to mislead people, so I'll get straight to the point. If you're not interested in the activity, you may leave. But once the study begins, the doors will lock. We will be drawing approximately 3 vials of each individual's blood." The announcement made my blood run cold. What sort of study involved drawing blood from desperate people in a sketchy garage at midnight? 3 people got up as soon as he spoke the word blood and basically ran out of the room. I didn't blame them one fucking bit. We knew nothing about these people. Did they even know how to draw blood? I should have left. I should have walked out and never looked back, but I needed that money. My girlfriend's elbow jabbed me in the side to get my attention. "We're leaving, right?" she said, grabbing her purse off the ground and standing up. I remained seated and looked up at her. "I need this money, babe. I can't." "So you're going to let these random people you know nothing about stick a needle in your arm?" Her face was turning red, making her big green eyes light up her face like a Christmas tree. "Easy for you to say, you aren't about to get kicked out of your apartment. I don't exactly have another option here, Taylor. You can leave, I won't blame you one bit, but I gotta stay." 3 individuals immediately got up and hurried out of the room as soon as he mentioned the word blood. I didn't blame them one bit. We had no idea who these people were, or if they even had the necessary qualifications to draw blood. Though I should have followed suit and left, never looking back. But the truth was I was desperate for the money. My girlfriend nudged me with her elbow to get my attention. "We need to leave, okay?" She picked up her purse from the ground and stood up. I remained seated and met her gaze. "I can't just leave, babe. I need the cash." "So you're willing to let strangers you don't know stick a needle in your arm?" Anger was evident on her face, causing her vivid green eyes to light up. "It's easy for you to say. You're not on the verge of being kicked out of your apartment. I don't have a choice here, Taylor. You go ahead and leave, but I have to stay." "How the hell am I supposed to get back home?" she demanded, her eyes filling with tears. I reached into my pocket and handed her my car keys. The anger faded from her face and a look of genuine concern took over. "I don't want to leave you, Romy," she said, sitting back down and handing me the keys back. Guilt washed over me at her willingness to endure this madness for me. Taylor didn't need the money her mother paid for her housing so she could fully focus on school. I tried not to resent her for that, but sometimes my jealousy got the best of me. We couldn't have been more different if we tried. Until recently, I had been working 50 hours a week just to afford my lousy apartment. Then I caught the worst cold of my life, which turned into bronchitis and a sinus infection. The sickness lasted 3 weeks and I was still sniffling. My manager decided to fire me for being absent so much. I didn't have health insurance, so I couldn't get a doctor's note. I begged and pleaded with him not to let me go, but he didn't care. All they cared about was making money, and I couldn't do that if I couldn't show up and make my calls. I hated that job, but it paid my rent and put food on my table. My face flushed hot as I thought about my situation, and I felt an increasing urge to stay. I glanced around the room and wondered why everyone else was staying. Some of them looked even worse off than me. A woman across from us had skin that resembled peeled potatoes inside before cutting off the brown spots. Her clothes were falling off her bony limbs, and when she opened her mouth, I could see her decaying teeth. Track marks adorned her arms despite her attempts to hide them with bracelets. "What do you want the blood for? Who are you people?" the man in the red Nikes asked anxiously. He was tapping his foot faster now, and I feared his leg might fly out of its socket. The old woman responded with a smile that reminded me of a grandmother looking down on her grandchild. "We are an organization that aids in healthcare studies. We need the blood for research. We clearly stated in the ad that if you are on drugs, you cannot participate," Claude replied, sounding angry. We can't be held responsible for any adverse effects resulting from your inability to read. Damn, Claude was a total jerk. As the thoughts spiraled in my head, I suddenly felt a hand on my arm, and I jumped in shock. The sound of laughter echoed around me. The tourniquet tightened around my arm, causing a pinching sensation. I hated getting my blood drawn because I couldn't watch, and I always felt nauseous afterward. Blood in general made me forget how to breathe. Acid formed in my stomach, and I had to take deep breaths to stop myself from vomiting. Just as I was about to lose control, the tourniquet loosened. I breathed out, grateful to be alive. They hadn't killed me. They told us to remove our blindfolds and drink some water. Moments later, we were handed large sums of cash wrapped in red rubber bands. Claude handed each person their cash, and their faces lit up with joy, except for Taylor. She yawned and stuffed the cash carelessly into her purse. I dropped her off at her apartment, and we were both too exhausted to speak. Instead, I held her hand and rubbed my thumb along her smooth skin. After saying goodnight, I went home and collapsed into a deep sleep. The next morning, I felt like I had drunk 20 shots of vodka the night before. My vision was blurry, and my limbs felt heavy. I stumbled to the bathroom and barely managed to vomit into the shower. It burned my throat and made tears well up in my eyes. When I looked down, my vomit was black. This couldn't possibly be normal. I couldn't recall eating or drinking anything black. My heart was pounding so hard that I thought it might burst out of my chest. What was happening to me? I remembered coughing up some green mucus when I had a sinus infection. Perhaps my body was still in recovery mode? That had to be it. I stumbled into the living room, using the walls to support my weak body, and collapsed onto my old, beaten-up sofa. I needed a distraction, something to take my mind off the events of last night. I turned on the TV and was immediately hit with something that I could never forget. A picture of the man in the red Nikes from last night's study was on the local news. He looked drastically different in this picture. He was smiling and looked presentable. I unmuted the TV just in time to hear the announcer say, "Breaking news. A local man was found dead on Treasure Island. The cause of death has officials stumped, but one witness thinks it was poison. Stay tuned for more details." My thoughts swirled wildly in my head. Poison? It couldn't be related to the blood draw. The blood draw couldn't have killed the man. But then again, if it was done incorrectly, it might have. However, he had walked out of that room with us unscathed. As I thought back to the blindfolds, a burst of panic shot through me. What were they trying to conceal? A single thought pounded through my mind, drowning out all others. They weren't drawing blood, they were injecting us with something. Something that killed one of us.